Hey folks, Alamandic, the Hot Rod Hippie here. This week's video, we're taking a look at the C10. This is episode 8 of the C10 Build vlog. I'm just gonna go ahead and give you a walk around and show you the projects we have been working on this truck between myself and my dad. Unfortunately, we are behind schedule on where I wanted to be on this truck at this point. So I've had to really hunker down. I haven't been able to really film as much as I'd like to because I just need to get work done. And unfortunately, stopping to pick up the camera and follow along and set up the camera, the right angles and all that, that is very, very time consuming in the middle of a project like this. And we've just had to keep on moving. That said, I'm gonna try my best to give you some information about the projects we have been working on so you will learn something, hopefully, from what I'm gonna show you here. One of the projects I worked on since the last spoke to you folks is this intake for the engine. I used a 4-inch 90-degree tube here with a single K&N air filter on it. It's a really very simplistic intake, but I think it looks okay. It's got a nice look to it in this engine bay. A few important notes on this is, of course, it's got the mass airflow sensor. It's an LS3 blade style sensor. I had to weld a boss in for that. And I also made the support bracket to actually mount it to the engine. So it's all mounted to the engine. It'll move with the engine and not the body or anything like that. That solid mount heads down to the water pump and bolts onto one of the bosses on the water pump there. One thing I generally try to focus on is building a really good cold air intake. I've done this on numerous projects. If you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen where I've built like full fender well air boxes and air boxes that intake air over top of the radiator in cars. And I really try to do that. And unfortunately in this build, I just don't have the time to dedicate to that. This is fully functional. It's gonna be good, clean air. It's just gonna be warmer air than I would normally like to do. More of a hot air intake than a cold air intake. It will not lose me 30, 40 horsepower, but it's definitely not the thing that I would try to focus on normally. What I could see doing in the future is maybe cutting a hole in the inner fender and sticking a filter down through that and building a shield and box in there to keep from picking up water and dust and dirt off the roadway. I could also build an air box that intakes over top of the radiator. This does have these hood vent areas here that force air into the radiator, but I could see directing them over top of the radiator into an air box in the future. So I have some options for what I could do on this thing. It's just, I know for a fact that at any one of those that I undertook would take me multiple days, if not a week or more, to fabricate, and I just cannot devote that time on this project right now. I'm not trying to talk down on my own work or this truck. Believe me, this intake is perfectly fine. And if you do something like this on your build, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the next step that I would like to take that I unfortunately just don't have time to take, but I thought I would explain to you folks. Now also in this engine bay, I whipped up a couple of brackets to mount the ignition coils to the valve covers on these engines. That is where they mount originally, but the original mounts are just, they're hideous in my opinion. They take up the full valve cover, they cover a lot of the engine up, and just have all this exposed wiring. I'm still gonna have exposed wiring, but you'll see how I do that when I do a full dedicated video on the engine wiring. This is just a little bit cleaner of a look. Has all the coils nicely, neatly stacked together with those ICT billet brackets. And then I made brackets to mount those brackets to the valve covers where I wanted them to be. Now I have been working on the hood of this truck, working on the actual exterior dent repair and such. I need to do a dedicated video about that though. There's a lot involved with knocking these dents out and repairing these edges and such. That you folks deserve a dedicated video on that, especially because I've been using a shrinking disc. There is my Sun Chaser serrated style shrinking disc. Folks have asked for dedicated videos about this many times. I need to do that, and hopefully I will be doing that on this hood of the truck very soon. You can see some of the repair work I have been doing on this thing. It's not perfect, but there's so little access inside of here due to the inner structures that it's never gonna be as good as I would really like it to be, but it's a lot better than it was now that I got the shrink on it and all that. We will discuss this more, as I said. Also with that shrinking disc, this thing looks like it had a carburetor fire at one point, and I want to try and get that, well, I need to get that popping out of there, so we'll talk about that. Now, my dad has primarily been working on the bed of the truck. Almost everything that's been done to the bed of this truck is my dad's handiwork, and he's been doing a pretty good job of it. He's working on building a bed structure since this thing has this full trailing arm, Porter-built drop member rear suspension that really steps up so the truck can lay frame. He had to raise the bed floor up above that level. So he's been working on this structure here to mount the whole bed down and give that floor a place to mount to. He is doing full wood bed strips in this, and he's gonna make his own custom wood bed since he's a carpenter and he wants to take that part on himself. I said in a previous video that the bumpers on these trucks, my dad and I never liked them. We were trying to come up with other options, something else to do. And we figured out something once we got this bumper mounted up on here. He mocked it up, got it where it needed to be, and we stepped back and we looked at it and we realized the biggest problem with it was there's a huge gap between the bed and the bumper. There's just nothing there. There was no filler pieces. There was nothing to fill that area up. And it makes sense. This was a work truck. You know, 1965, 55 years ago, GMC did not expect somebody to buy this and hot rod it. They expected it to be a work truck. So they just didn't have the details like that in a truck like this. So we put our heads together and my dad implemented this idea, and I think it turned out excellent. That is, we picked up a roll pan for the truck. Now, if you're familiar with roll pans, usually a roll pan is meant to delete the bumper. But when you run just a roll pan on these trucks, I think it doesn't look right. The whole back of this truck is very flat. And if you have just a roll pan, it's very flat, continuing down to the ground. It just doesn't look right. It's missing something there. So what my dad did is he modified the roll pan. He cut notches into it, sections into it, to go around the bumper brackets, and he shaved the original license plate opening in the roll pan. They do make them without the license plate openings. Unfortunately, our local parts supplier only had it with the license plate opening. Now that allowed us to get this in here and cap this off, and it looks so much better now. There's a filled in section here. As my dad said, he stepped back and he looked at it and he said, it looks like it should have looked from the factory now. And that was what we were aiming for. Now, we didn't just cut into the thing and then bolt it on there the way they originally intended it to be. We actually did cut the openings in and fold in flanges on it. We left enough of the material in place of the original structure and then folded in with hammer forming to create a flanged opening so it looks like a nice finished off piece. If you peek down in there, you can see flanges in there. You don't just see sharp edges or unfinished edges, none of that. Originally, the roll pan was meant to just kind of screw into the back of the bed, and that was just, it was not nearly as nice as I would like. With the flanges my dad added in here, he was able to weld on some tabs, and now it bolts in with real bolts to the underside of the back cross member here. We also made sure to cap off the ends of this. Again, these were just open ends. It was kind of overlapping the bed sides. We trimmed it back and actually went ahead and capped those off. So again, from the side, this looks like a finished off part. It just looks like how it should have looked originally. Excuse the fact that my dad is using the fuel tank as a work surface, but I still need to get the airbag mounts in here and start plumbing this whole air ride system, as well as getting the shocks in place. So that stuff should be coming in videos very soon. Now moving into the truck for what I'm working on right now. At the moment, I'm working on shaving the original radio opening. Somebody way back in the day butchered the thing. In fact, here it is. You can see the original radio opening is all butchered opening. It was hacked up. So I either would have had to repair that with a patch panel. Unfortunately, to my knowledge, nobody makes the proper patch panel for GMC. All the ones I was able to find were for Chevy, and they said Chevy and GMC, but the designs are different. So it wouldn't have been correct for the GMC, so I'm just shaving it off anyway. If it's not gonna be correct, I might as well just shave it and make it what I want it to be. So I'm gonna weld in that patch panel that I made. I just cut one large opening to get rid of the ashtray and the radio opening, and I made this kind of trapezoid shaped piece to go in there and just replace the whole section with clean, fresh metal. Then I'm gonna mount in a radio in there. We have to figure out if my dad wants a single DIN or a double DIN radio. I'm thinking double DIN makes sense because you got the space, you might as well use it. Also, I'm gonna mount the AC controls on there and various other things I might think about putting in that section. I'm not 100% just yet. I also already wrapped up. I shaved the original center speaker on this. It's gonna get Kicks panel speakers, so it doesn't need the original dash speaker. And I don't like just pulling them out and leaving that open because you can see that. Nice sunny day out of the car show and you can look down through that speaker opening and you see the wires under the dashboard or the plumbing for the AC. I don't like that. I didn't want to have that. So I shaved that off of there entirely for a smooth dashboard. Last weekend, I actually did head down to South Carolina for a little bit of a break, just talk some shop with somebody else, another YouTuber, the Fab Forum. So if you're not familiar, he has a much larger following than me, so you probably are familiar. I checked out his shop, some of the projects he's currently working on. We talked YouTube and all of that. So I'll throw a couple of videos and some photos in there right here, right now, so you folks can check out things that I did. If you're not following me on TikTok or Instagram, I posted some photos and videos there when I was at his shop. I didn't want to film a full dedicated video and use his shop for that while I was there. It was kind of a last minute thing anyway, so I didn't want to impose. So check those out real quick. Hey folks, it's my Saturday and I decided to take a little bit of time, head down to South Carolina and check out a heck of a shop. Let me show you around a little bit. Right now I'm in Kyle Voss's Fab Shop. Some of you may be familiar, he's got a much bigger following than I do on YouTube with the Fab Forums. Builds like the Bibster back here, the Goose, the twin turbo Mustang, and the Fab Cab, the crew cab dually right here. He makes some really interesting video content. If you're not familiar, you should definitely check it out. I'll also tag him. He's here on TikTok as well, though not as much as he is on YouTube yet. Maybe go check it out and get him encouraged to do more. But I figured I'd show you folks the interesting stuff that's going on here, because who doesn't want to see metal madness? Such as this one started its life as a Fox body, but it's a little bit far off from that at this point. I don't know what you're doing with your Saturday, but I think mine's a little bit more. Taking a ride in Kyle Voss's, the Fab Forum's Fab's 10. Beautiful dually, we're just going for a little ride. And as with any content creators, there's a camera going. Now back to real life in my Prius, because I gotta head out. Let's go ahead and finish this video off by showing you these new ratchets I got in from the folks at GearWrench. I got a couple of sets of the new locking flex head design 90-tooth ratchets. Now I already reviewed the 90-tooth ratchets, the regular ratchets. You can check that out at the link up here. But actually talking about the flex head version, I'm liking this so far. It's a locking flex head, so you can go ahead and flex it to various angles and then lock it in position so it will not shift around on you. This is really handy, especially in like the high torque applications like this 1/2-inch one or the 3/8 one. When you're really wrenching on something in a tight engine bay, locking it at the flexed angle that you want keeps you from busting knuckles, having that thing flip and pivot on you. But you can also release it and still have the pivoting, flexing design if you want. Usually my go-to ratchets, the ones that I reach for time and time again, are my Matco ratchets, and they have a similar locking flex head design. Theirs feels a little bit tighter, a little more sturdy. It locks it in that position just a little nicer than these do, but I do like the feel of these. It's also important to note that price-wise, these 3-piece chrome handle version, I like the comfort grip ones, as I've mentioned before in videos. The chrome handle ones, I think this set here is a $129 on Amazon right now, I believe. One of these ratchets from, say, Matco or Snap-on would have cost you that much. So it's a pretty good deal if you're not looking to spend a ton of money on ratchets. These are ones I highly recommend you check out. I'll throw a link in the description down to those ratchets if you want to check them out for yourself. All right, folks, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you found this interesting. Like I said, I'm just kind of doing a little walk around, catch you up a little bit on what we've been doing on the project. I didn't want to leave you folks in the dark. I wanted to show you some things, some of the details of this build, so maybe you can get some ideas. Things like that roll pan, about how I talked about finishing off the edges. That just gives that a much better finished look than just a piece of 16 gauge flat metal just ending at a cutoff end. It looks much more finished. And it's one of those things that panel took my dad, like, between the time of going to get it at the store and having to work on a few other things, it took about 3 days to get that thing to fit where it is now, where we're happy with it. And that is just time that nobody's gonna look at that and think that panel took 3 days. That's all there is to it, but that's the reality of doing this work sometimes. I think my dad did a killer job on that. Let me know in the comments down below if you think so as well. All right, folks, I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please go ahead and drop it a like. Let me know what you think about the work we have done on the truck to this point. Let me know in the comments down below. Go ahead and check out the Patreon account, patreon.com/HotRodHippie. That directly supports this channel. And get subscribed to keep up to date with all the build videos yet to come. Thanks for coming around, folks.